I gotta say, guys, I really enjoyed the last episode of The Mandalorian. Spoilers ahead. The peaceful world of Navarro is under a great pirate threat. Armed only with flowers, interpretive dance, and delicious meat sticks, the good people on this planet don't stand a chance against the fearsome Gorian Shand and his pirates. And since Navarro didn't sign the New Republic Treaty, bureaucracy, politics, foreign policy, blah 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 blah, this means that Navarro will stand alone. Not even the well-meaning X-Wing pilot Captain Carson Teva is going to be able to come to Navarro's rescue. But instead, he does the next best thing and he calls his Mandalorian pal Din Djarin, who just happened to have a good friend and claim on some land on that planet. What ensues is a small tactical deployment of the entire tribe of the Children of the Watch. And it's pretty awesome to see what I consider one of the finest fighting forces in the galaxy in action. What makes the Mandalorian people so different from almost any other faction? Well, it's what happens to Mandalorian society when they organize themselves into a militia, aka a military force made up of civilians that are more or less designed to supplement traditional military forces when there's an emergency. It's not something one should take lightly, but most militias are made up of everyday people with normal jobs and lives. They might train on the weekends, have some basic knowledge about firearms and how to move tactically and avoid shooting their friends in the back. But for the most part, militias are kind of useful in most complex operations and are mostly used for static defense, usually behind well-fortified positions. To turn a militia or territorial defense unit into something a bit more capable requires time, training, and resources. But that's not what the Mandalorians are like. You see, if the Mandalorians were in like a 4X game, their cultural trait would be the fact that their militias are freaking overpowered. See, Mandalorian militias are still made up of civilians. The only thing is that these civilians, well, the job they prefer the most is being a mercenary, followed by bounty hunting and, I don't know, gladiator fighting. Which means these aren't just weekend warriors who like to have a little bit of fun with their friends and perhaps learn a little bit about self-defense in case something ever does happen to their nation. No, these are Mandalorian civilians, and they are amongst the most experienced and best equipped fighters in the galaxy. Therefore, a Mandalorian militia, or war party as it's better known, is more like a small commando unit full of extremely experienced and well-equipped warriors. And I say warriors because there should be a distinction here between warriors and the more traditional soldier. If you understand this distinction, you'll probably understand the Mandalorians a bit better. You see, soldiers are individuals who fight for a nation. They must adhere to a strict rules-based order within the chain of command. Soldiers are professionals and on a career path. Soldiers who routinely engage in combat generally put their emotions on check and try their best to do their job and return home safely. There is no love for war or combat. It's a grim and dangerous task, and someone has to do it. So what are warriors? Well, they're a bit different. Paz, you want to drop that Gatling gun and explain it to us?
I was there on Navarro that night. I fought against Grief Karga and his hunters. I saw my brothers and sisters fall at the hands of the Imperial butchers. I saw many die to save the life of this one tiny foundling.
Now, most soldiers will just chalk up the situation as foobar. It's just another day of following orders and risking your life for an objective you might not understand. Soldiers are trained to fit inside the system. They're a cog in a larger machine. The entire training and boot camp process, all that difficult conditioning and yelling from the drill sergeants, it's actually designed to break down an individual and get rid of their preconceived notions and behaviors so that they can be rebuilt from the ground up into a valuable tool for the military. Now, warriors view combat very differently from soldiers. Soldiers see it as a necessary evil. Warriors see it as a way of life. And the Children of the Watch, like many Mandalorian factions in the past, believe in fighting for honor and glory, followed by whatever personal beliefs they might subscribe to. Paz Vizsla, for instance, hates people who wield small pistols because it kind of looks girly. It's not true, I made that up. And so while a soldier will do their duty and shut up, a warrior must know exactly what they are getting into and what they are fighting for. And they'll only fight if the cause lines up with their own belief system, or at a minimum, they respect the person who's in charge of the war party.
And now we are asked to sacrifice yet again. The question we should be asking ourselves is why? Why should we lay our lives down yet again?
Who knew that maxing out your Gatling gun skills would unlock the equally potent rhetorical question.
Because we are Mandalorians!
And even though losing dozens of warriors really hurt the children on the watch, it was ultimately worth it because of how much this group values their children, or foundlings. Although the children on the watch are a bit more rational than previous Mandalorian factions, at an individual level, the members of Mandalorian society are very emotional and ideological. These are bold people with strong personal convictions, and the loyalty that they have for one another is something you can only find in such tight-knit groups. As such, cultures don't really scale very well to a larger size. But the Mandalorians are unique. In place of rank hierarchy, regulations, and protocols, which oftentimes govern larger military forces, the Mandalorians have a pretty free-form structure in how war parties are run, and instead focus on training the individuals from birth on how to act and how to behave with other Mandalorians. This means that for a Mando, maneuvering with other Mandos in battle formation is almost second nature. Mandos don't need to be certified at the reins. They don't have to, undergo a lot of practice or carry out military exercises. And that is because Mandalorians are fundamentally different from soldiers who fight to live. You see, Mandalorians, they live to fight. While soldiers might go home in between deployments and enjoy a civilian life, for Mandalorians, learning how to fight, building a new weapon, well, that is life. And it is a pure expression of joy for them.
I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are part of my religion.
In this way, the Mandalorians aren't all that different from the Jedi and the clones. All of these groups train their members from birth, which means compared to the average fighter, Mandalorians are far more skilled, prepared, and require less oversight and structure. There are no rookies, there are no boots. These are seasoned and grizzled veterans who enjoy killing people creatively with their mess kits. And that's true throughout the entire war party, which presents a very unique situation. See, while there's very little structure in Mandalorian war parties, that doesn't mean Mandalorians just jump into battle without a plan and start shooting everything. Well, actually, sometimes they do that, especially if they're covered in high-quality Beskar. Mandalorians are smart enough to understand and study standard military practices and then kind of pick and choose what they like and what they don't like. As a matter of fact, many Mandalorians have probably served in mercenary armies, so they've picked up probably a few tricks here and there on how to do things the proper way. Mandalorians see value in information gathering, and every warrior on a raid is brought up to speed on what they can expect on the battlefield and what the plan is. This means enemy numbers, weapons, and what kind of vehicles, ships, and defenses they might be using. And it's not just the officers who get to attend these briefings, everyone does. And the reason why this is because there aren't really ranks in Mandalorian society. What happens is when there's a war party, the individual with the most combat experience and knowledge and respect from the others becomes the leader. And because Mandalorians have a high number of skilled and heavily armed infantry, they can use advanced small unit tactics, which involve separating their force into much smaller mobile groups. When these larger groups split off into smaller fire teams, the most experienced individual in these fire teams then takes command. That's how it works. It's very simple.
Team 2, moving toward courtyard.
Now, many of these Mandalorians have actually fought alongside their brothers in arms since they were like children. And so, once again, the bond and trust in between Mandos is great, and not all that different from what we see in the clones. And if you compare how the Mandalorians move compared to the Stormtroopers, it's actually quite different. For one, the average Stormtrooper fire team is a lot larger than what we see with these elite Mandalorian commando squads. The Mandalorian fire team also moves with a lot more purpose and aggression. We see good spacing, people maintaining eyes on their sectors of fire. It's like watching an NFL offense run a 2-minute drill compared to like a Pop Warner football team. It just is not comparable. And Mandalorians, they don't just bring experience to the battlefield, and that's because experience tells you to never make the battle fair for the enemy. And so the average Mandalorian is super well equipped with premium top-of-the-line gear that could never be mass distributed to a larger military force. And so while the Stormtroopers are wearing janky plastoid armor, the Mandos, for the most part, have a mixture of Durasteel and Beskar armor, which is a lot higher quality. Actually, a good amount of the Mandalorians' traditions and cultural practices revolve around their armor and also their helmets.
This armor has been in my family for 3 generations.
And on that suit of armor, they have enough firepower modded and bolted on there to take down a capital ship. Unlike standard rifle squads that might have a mixture of small arms and heavier support weapons, the Mandos are all kitted out like a bunch of people playing Call of Duty. Attachments and bolt-ons, explosives, everyone's got them. And so when just a handful of Mandalorians decided to take on that pirate king, Gorian Shand, without a fleet of their own, was I surprised? Not at all. Neither was I surprised with their quick and decisive victory. For all the negative things I said about the Mandalorians' culture and traditions, they still make the finest fighting force in the entire galaxy. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about that. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.